Funding for the Trial of Adolf Eichmann was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the annual financial support from viewers like you. Additional funding was provided by the Charles H. Revson Foundation and the Righteous Persons Foundation.
I admit my participation freely and without pressure. After all, I was the one who transported the Jews to the camps. Yet what is there to admit? I carried out my orders.
Criminal case number 40-61.
Are you Adolf Eichmann, the son of Adolf Karl Eichmann?
When Berlin fell to the Allies in May of 1945 and Germany surrendered, many Nazi leaders were captured and charged with war crimes. Adolf Eichmann was not among them. The 1946 war crimes trial in Nuremberg brought to light Nazi atrocities, but did not focus on crimes against the Jews. From the witness stand came the first public word of Eichmann's horrible role. One of his lieutenants testified that Eichmann told him, quote, "I will leap laughing into my grave with satisfaction in the knowledge that I personally helped to exterminate millions of Jews," unquote. 48 hours after this incriminating testimony, Eichmann was already using an alias, and he slipped away from an American prisoner of war camp 35 miles from Nuremberg and disappeared into the mountains of central Germany. He adopted the name Otto Henninger and became a chicken farmer. After the war, many Jews moved to the new state of Israel, established in 1948 after a brutal struggle for independence. Among the first citizens of this new state were nearly 300,000 European Jews who had survived the Holocaust. Residents and settlers alike began the monumental task of building their new nation.
People then, in the years 48 and 49, were all burdened with the building of homes for their families. They didn't like to hear so much about what happened to us in the camps. And besides, I can say it, I'm not ashamed. The Israelis related to us as cowards. They even used to call us names like Sabonim, pieces of soap.
In the beginning, when we came, we would tell our stories, but we soon realized that no one was listening to us. People did not have the patience to hear our stories. We therefore fell silent and did not speak about it. Everybody kept his story inside himself.
But for David Ben-Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, it was his nation's duty to tell the story of the crimes against the Jews and to catch the war criminals responsible. He had announced that Adolf Eichmann must be brought to justice if he is still alive. In 1950, with the help of the Nazi underground, Eichmann fled Germany to hide in Argentina. He worked first as a surveyor in a small mountain village. After 2 years, he felt safe enough to bring his wife and 3 sons over from Germany. They eventually moved to Buenos Aires. He worked on a rabbit farm then as a mechanic at the Argentine Mercedes-Benz plant, and he soon became a foreman and was building a new life. But in the fall of 1959, the Israelis got a tip that Eichmann was living in a poor suburb of Buenos Aires under the name of Ricardo Clement.
In the beginning, the matter was between Ben-Gurion and me. We discussed what we should do with this information, the name and address of Eichmann, which were in our hands. I, of course, recommended that we plan his capture. Ben-Gurion agreed.
Israel sent special agents to Argentina, and they kept Eichmann under surveillance for months. They photographed his house from every angle, drew up detailed maps. Undercover, they asked him for directions, taking pictures of him with a camera hidden in a briefcase. Finally, on May 11, 1960, they struck. They grabbed Eichmann after he got off a bus on his way home from work and took him to a safe house for questioning. He signed a statement saying he was willing to stand trial.
I, the undersigned, Adolf Eichmann, state herewith of my own free will, since my true identity has now been revealed, that there is no point in my continuing to evade justice. I declare myself willing to proceed to Israel and to stand trial there before a competent court.
The Israelis drugged him and smuggled him out of the country to Israel. And once there, he was booked and processed like any criminal suspect.
The main goal was not the capture. If we had wanted to get rid of him, we could have done that in Argentina. The entire operation had a single purpose, to bring him to Israel and to make a trial on the Holocaust.
It was a nice May day. Monday, I came to the Knesset, arrived from Haifa, and I saw there was some tension, there were some rumors. Something important will happen. We didn't know what. Ben-Gurion asked to be allowed to give an announcement.
A short time ago, one of the greatest of Nazi war criminals, Adolf Eichmann, was found, is already under arrest in Israel, and will shortly be put on trial under the Nazis and Nazi collaborators law.
People stand up, the members of the Knesset, the gallery, the journalists, all stand up. They embraced each other. It was, how to tell you, I have no words to describe it, for all of us, and especially for me. It was euphoria, a superhuman feeling of happiness that justice will be done.
Headlines around the world announced Eichmann's capture. Israel's kidnapping him had violated Argentina's sovereignty and provoked a firestorm of controversy. Even Israel's friends were critical. The UN convened a special session to consider Argentina's complaint.
Is this a threat to peace? Eichmann brought to trial by the very people to whose total physical annihilation he dedicated all his energies. It is because we know that no threat to the sovereignty of the Argentine or of any other country has or will come from Israel, because of the sense of justice we both share, that we say in real friendship that this is not an item that should divide us any longer.
Resolution, please signify so by raising your hand.
Argentina accepted Israel's formal apology, and the UN voted to let Israel keep Eichmann. He was taken to a remote top-security prison where he spent 11 months living side by side with the investigators who were building the case against him.
This was, at the time, one of the most secret places in the country. No one knew where we were, not even our families.
Mickey Goldman, a survivor of Auschwitz, was chief inspector of Bureau 6, a special police task force created to prepare the prosecution's case.
He was guarded 24 hours a day by people, by policemen. In addition to that, he was checked by one of our doctors twice a day. And before he received his food, one of the guards tasted the food in order to make sure no one put poison in it.
Every day, the investigators recorded their interrogation of Eichmann. The tapes were transcribed every night, and the next morning the prisoner was given his chance to correct them. In the end, Eichmann's description of his life would fill more than 3,500 pages. A picture of the man was emerging. He was born in 1906 near Cologne, Germany, but grew up in Austria. He dropped out of high school, went to work as a traveling salesman for an American oil company, and when he was 26, he joined the growing Nazi Party. Eichmann married in 1935. He was assigned to the Jewish department of the SS, the leading agent of terror in Hitler's regime. He studied the Jews, gathering information about their leaders, synagogues, businesses, culture. He even asked the SS to pay for Hebrew lessons. He visited Palestine in 1937 to consider the possibility of sending German Jews there. The Nazis seized Austria on March 12, 1938. 4 days later, Eichmann was sent to supervise expelling the country's Jews. It was here that he proved himself to be the Nazis' foremost Jewish specialist. After Israeli investigators completed their portrait of him, they turned to Israel's Polish-born Attorney General Gideon Hausner. His legal case would depend on how well Bureau 6 had done its job.
They presented us with summaries of the different chapters of the Holocaust, which are very accurate, very well done, which show good taste and a good orientation in historiography.
We didn't know too much about the Holocaust when we started the trial. Let's not mince words, but we didn't know too much about it. Ben-Gurion knows very well. He was going to conduct this trial because he wanted a generation who had known a thing, our young people, to learn in order never to forget.
34-year-old Gavriel Bach was a legal advisor to Bureau 6.
We were very much aware of the fact that this was a special case with enormous historic impact. This was the first and only case until that point where the Holocaust was the focal point and where we could deal with it in all its aspects. We went through hundreds of thousands of cases from hundreds of different sources of evidence, with microfilms and all the Nuremberg trials and all the German documents and the documents in all the various European countries. And then after all the evidence was collected, the team of the prosecution, we sat together and we decided what form the case for the prosecution should take.
While the Israelis prepared their case, Eichmann also was busy poring over the evidence. He asked Dr. Robert Servatius to represent him. Servatius was a well-known lawyer from Cologne who had been a defense attorney at the Nuremberg trials, but Eichmann could not afford him. So Israel agreed to pay his fee, and the 63-year-old lawyer arrived in October of 1960 to talk with his client for the first time. He had to have a strategy that would counter the well-laid plans of the Israeli prosecutors.
We regarded, legally speaking, the concerted effort of the Nazi machine to exterminate the Jewish people as a vast conspiracy. It's a vast criminal conspiracy.
We knew that it wasn't Eichmann giving an order to kill that, and therefore he's guilty of a murder, and another murder, and another murder.
The law of conspiracy in America and in other English-speaking countries regards one of the conspirators as acting for all the others, and all members of the conspiracy are responsible for the conspiracy.
Here there was the opportunity to have the man, the central figure in the whole of the execution of this criminal scheme, and to be able to depict point after point what happened. We decided to present at least one live witness from every country to describe and bring home and to show people really what happened on the human level. Because, you know, documents and figures and even heaps of corpses, there comes a moment when these things don't signify anything anymore.
We had to bring the picture of those 10 years in the middle of the 20th century after the birth of Christianity to the conscience of the world. That was possible.
A community theater in Jerusalem was converted into a 750-seat courtroom, big enough to accommodate the large numbers of spectators and journalists expected to attend. The Israelis built a bulletproof glass booth to protect Eichmann. The booth would become the trial's most enduring symbol. The authorities wanted to take no chances with the safety of their notorious suspect. When the day of the trial arrived, Monday, April 11, 1961, security inside and outside the courthouse was very tight.
There was a big demand for entrance tickets to come into the trial, and when the trial opened, the entire hall was occupied by press from around the world. There were hundreds of them.
An American television company made the unprecedented request to videotape the entire trial.
This was such an exceptional case, and the public interest in Israel and abroad was so tremendous that we somehow owed it to history and to the public interest to be able to really follow this in all details.
The trial of Adolf Eichmann would be the first trial ever televised.
And then, of course, there was that moment when Eichmann came in behind his glass booth, and for a minute we didn't feel it, and then suddenly the realization that Eichmann was sitting there, and this was a moment of tremendous emotion. You know, our people from the Israel radio were giving a running commentary. Suddenly when Eichmann came in, they were overwhelmed by their emotions. They just couldn't continue.
And when I look at him sitting in the glass cage, it was for me a strong feeling. I got the imagination that it is a brutal man, a strong German type man. And I find in the cage there a rat, a mouse, with frightened eyes.
The most dominant picture in my mind was the first moment of this trial, when these judges came into the courtroom and he jumped up to attention with the Israeli flag behind them and the emblem of the state behind them. That man whose only object in life had become to destroy these people, that man should stand trial for an Israeli court representing a sovereign court of the Jewish people that he wanted to destroy. To me, that showed the importance of the creation of the State of Israel more than anything that had happened before.
Under Israeli law, the case would be decided not by a jury, but by 3 judges. Presiding Judge Moshe Landau of the Israeli Supreme Court, Judge Benjamin Halevi of the Jerusalem District Court, and Judge Yitzhak Raveh of the Tel Aviv District Court. All 3 were educated in Germany and had emigrated to Palestine as young men before the war. They would hear the accused in his own language. There would be no chance of a translator making a critical mistake.
You are accused before the court in terms of an indictment containing 15 counts. First count. The accused, together with others, caused the deaths of millions of Jews as one of the persons responsible for the implementation of the Nazis' plan known as the final solution of the Jewish question. The accused carried out acts of extermination that were coordinated with massacre units mobilized from the SS and called Einsatzgruppen. Such units, together with others, caused the deaths of additional hundreds of thousands of Jews by assembling them into ghettos, which were implemented under cruel and inhuman conditions in Germany, together with others, perpetrated the extermination of Jews by putting them to death in concentration camps, the purpose of which were mass murder. Were Auschwitz, Belzec, Sobibor, Treblinka, and Maidan acts with the intention of destroying the Jewish people. Do you understand the indictment?
Before Eichmann entered his plea, his attorney rose to present their first line of defense.
I request the permission of the court to object before the accused replies as to whether he admits guilt or not.
Sirvanius asked the court to dismiss the case immediately. He argued that Jewish judges could not be fair to Eichmann.
I ask the court to consider whether reasons exist for any one of the judges to be disqualified from sitting in judgment, or whether he himself should declare himself prejudiced.
Eine solche Vermutung liegt nahe. Sie ergibt sich daraus, dass das ganze jüdische
This concern arises from the fact that the entire Jewish people were drawn into the Holocaust.
We were aware of the fact that some of the preliminary objections of Servatius, that this was really maybe his most serious defense. And we, of course, prepared thoroughly for these points.
Attorney General Hausner responded that no judge, Jewish or otherwise, could or should be objective about genocide.
I wish to touch upon the first argument, which in fact is a general disqualification of any Jew to judge a man who is accused of attempting to destroy the Jewish people. The argument states, since you were the victims, you Jews cannot sit in judgment of Adolf Eichmann. Let him be judged by neutral persons. No one can demand that anyone be neutral towards the crime of genocide. And if a judge believes there is a person in the whole world who can be neutral towards this crime, then this judge is not fit to sit in judgment.
The preliminary arguments concluded on a Friday. The judges adjourned the court for the weekend, promising a ruling on Monday. Monday, April 18, 1961. The courtroom filled to capacity with nearly everyone speculating on the judge's decision.
I open the sixth session of the trial. The court will now read the following decision.
After a thorough evaluation of Eichmann's objections, the court ruled that they did not constitute sufficient reason to dismiss the case. As in any trial, the judges would have to divorce themselves from their emotions.
It is true that the memory of the catastrophe of the Holocaust stirs every Jew to the depths of his heart. But when this case is brought before us, it is our duty to restrain those feelings when we sit in judgment. And this duty we shall keep.
Prosecution of Adolf Eichmann could now begin.
Are you guilty or not guilty on the first count?
which means in the sense of the indictment, not guilty. That was not so very original on his part. That was a phrase used by some of the defendants in the Nuremberg trials.
The question whether he feels morally guilty or not is not for the court to decide. That's his private business, he wants to say. Within the framework of law, and within that framework alone, he thinks he has a right to say, I'm not guilty.
In the spirit of the indictment, not guilty.
And so it went for every single one of the 15 counts against him. For each charge, Eichmann's reply was the same.
The prisoner may sit down.
It was time for Israeli Attorney General Gideon Hausner to make his opening statement. He had been troubled. He felt that since he was not a survivor, since he had not suffered in the Holocaust, perhaps he was not qualified to lead Eichmann's prosecution. Before the trial started, he visited the ghetto fighters' kibbutz to discuss his doubts with Yitzhak Zugerman and his wife, and other leaders of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
And they were talking the whole night, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, the people there said, Gideon, you speak as if you were there. You know so much, and your feelings are so strong that we appoint you to speak in our name.
When I stand before you, judges of Israel, in this court to accuse Adolf Eichmann, I do not stand alone. Here with me at this moment stand 6 million prosecutors. But alas, they cannot rise to level the finger of accusation in the direction of the glass dock and cry out, J'accuse, against the man who sits there, because their ashes have been piled up in the mounds of Auschwitz and the fields of Treblinka, or spilled into the rivers of Poland. And their graves are scattered throughout the length and breadth of Europe. Their blood cries to heaven, but their voice cannot be heard. Thus it falls to me to be their mouthpiece and to deliver the heinous accusation in their name.
They heard the speech on the radio of the bus. And then when he said, I'm not standing here alone, but with 6 million Jews, some of the older people bowed their heads. Some tears were shed. Most of us were very pale.
There was only one man who had been concerned almost entirely with the Jews, whose business had been their destruction. That man was Adolf Eichmann.
Using witness testimony and Nazi documents, Hausner began his two-part mission to convict Eichmann and at the same time to bring a new generation in Israel and the world the full story of the Holocaust.